Hey, it's Alan. Welcome to this episode of Pipeline to Profitability. And today I've got a very, very special guest indeed. Now, Al Levy is, I call him a friend. He's been to visit down under and we had a great time. My podcast, Pipeline to Profitability, has been on air since 2013. Al Levy has been on the podcast more than anyone else, and this is the fourth time. The other times Al was on with, we discussed marketing, we discussed adding additional trades, and yeah, so it was great. So just quickly, Al Levy is a third generation plumber with his own plumbing, heating and cooling and electrical company based in the New York area. Al's a master in systematization, and he has done an amazing job with building his business to the point where he could step out. And Al might want to explain a little bit further about that amazing company that he's helped grow. I've also became friends with Ellen Rohr and Tommy Mello, who I haven't actually met yet. And Al's actually also working with an amazing brand called reins. So what I'll do is before I bugger this up anymore, Al, I'm going to hand it over to you. You might like to let our audience know a little bit about Al Levy and how you're changing the industry. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. We are friends. And it's pretty funny that this is my fourth time because I'm kind of like the house guest that shows up but he never leaves, based on what he just said. But this is over a period of time, and it's always been fun because two of us are so passionate. So for you listeners and those who are viewing here, I want to apologize because this is a guy, Al, who still has his New York accent, speaking to a guy named Allan who still has his Australian accent. One guy's in Houston and one guy's in Scottsdale. Try and figure that out. So anyway, yes, I was third generation, plumbing, heating, cooling, electric. We were making a lot of money, but it was killing me. And so we learned how to systematize our business. Everybody thinks this new thing is, oh, I can't find techs. I can't find techs. Gee, that's really new. We had that problem back in the 80s, 90s, 2000. It's not new, but we fixed it. So that's really what I want to share. I was able to turn the reins over. The fourth generation, my nephew is now in the business with my middle brother. And for the last 20 years, I've been traveling around one-to-one consulting, doing seminars with contractors and trades I was never in, from $1 million to $200 million. And one of the great ones was, of course, and still is, Tommy Mello A1 Garage, who has absolutely revolutionized the garage door industry. And yes, I worked with our good mutual friend, Ellen Rohr, with a lot of consultants, but then we did Zoom Drain. And I successfully shared my share to them so that they could get even bigger once they got rid of me. But all the systems are still in place. Very, very proud, to go nationwide. That's really impressive. And they've just taken off. But what I do these days is just help other contractors get these org charts and manuals and systems. But I really want to go higher level, which you and I always talk about, is what gets in our way as owners of contracting businesses, because there's a universal issue here. And Alan and Al, are not preaching because we have been there, my friends. We know what happens. And I really want to dig into that.
Yeah, look, one thing that I must say about you, Al, and all the time I have known you, and I can't remember whether we met through Matt Jones or whether we just met through the best practice groups.
Ellen Rohr, roads go through Ellen Rohr, my friend.
Frank Blau,
yes, all the greatest hits.
Yeah, and but the fact that you've been working with an amazing brand like Zoom Drain, and most of my coaching these days, since I exited the industry in Australia a couple of years back, is the drain space, and I feel that it's in my view, is one of the most underutilized areas of the industry that can potentially deliver the highest margins. And anyone that says there's other products and services in the home service industry that can deliver a higher net profit, higher margin, I need to get myself attached to that. But so let's talk about, Al, what gets in the way of us as owners in our contracting companies?
You know what? I think for myself in particular, I worked in the field, even though we were a big company, as a tech. My father believed I should never ask anybody to do anything that I hadn't done myself. And when I was a young man, I didn't like that. But I later on came to understand the thing. But what happens is, as a great tech, when you ask who's the best person to do this job, the answer is always you're going to put your hand up. But you're automatically going to choke the size of your business and keep your people from going and growing. And we had done that, even though we were 17 million, 70 people, which back in those days, in the 90s, this was a big company. And so we were the problem. We had to learn how to put the platforms in to systematize things so people could own their box. And then what we were doing, the way, Alan, I always love this analogy, is you are working for me, but I'm not going to tell you what you need to know, because if I do, you'll leave, and then where all my stuff goes. So we want you to perform, but we're not going to tell you how. So the best analogy I like is, I told you to jump, but I never told you when. I told you to jump, but I didn't tell you how high. So I sabotaged you, and we were great at sabotaging people. I think today, if the org chart, the box org chart, is really where it all starts to take form. But every box needs 4 to 5 KPIs and just known performance indicators, because we all like to use these letters and nobody knows. The problem that has come about, in my opinion, Alan, is because we have such great technology like ServiceTitan and all these other great softwares, and we could have a bank of computers where we look like we're NASA Space Center, right? And now we're looking at all this stuff because we can, not because we should. So what are the 4 that really move the needle? And you as the owner have to get really attached to that. And then what I knew for myself, and I write about it in my book, is, so why didn't I let these people help me? And it was my great industry friend, Dan Houlihan, another mutual friend of Ellen. And so he said to me, do you know what you're doing? And do you know why you're doing that? And it made me think about that. I like to be the rescuer, ride to the rescue. I like being the guru. I was always the smartest guy in the room. And here's the one that really tripped me up. I like being a fireman. You know, as a young kid, we want to be a fireman or a cop or whatever. So we like putting out fires. And here's the really sneaky one for all you owners out there. If there aren't any fires, you will subconsciously set the fire. As stupid as that sounds, because we don't go on our logic. We are emotionally attached to stuff, and then we defend everything with logic. And that's something I want you to really focus on.
Love it, Al. I have to say your book, The 7 Power Contractor, is definitely one of my favorites. And going back a few years before I suppose I changed direction myself, I was going to release a book myself. I've got the content. It's just a matter of doing it. Our mutual friend Mark Madison is always kicking my ass, but I decided to change. I added a couple of steps and was calling that the 9-step contractor series. The book will come out. I'll probably just call it Here's the Thing. There's a bit of a story behind that because, but look, I'll just make it interesting. I'll add some color to the book. But look, I'm always fascinated by your book. So maybe, Al, you might want to take a minute or two just to, I don't know if you can do it in a couple of minutes, but just take our listeners through what are the 7 steps in the 7 Power Contractor.
I'm happy to do it. So it's planning power, which is having a plan, which is another thing that gets in our way, but executing that plan, because you guys don't need another idea. You need another idea that gets implemented, but how do you do it in what order? So planning power is learning how to work on the right thing at the right time, the right way. And then operating power is having the right org chart, like a bingo board, and then having an operating manual that covers each of those boxes for the way you work, but not everything in those boxes. Because you, Mr. and Ms. Perfectionist, you want them to be like, they should read your mind, and that doesn't work. How do I know? Because we tried. My company was in business since 1936. If you could do that, we should have met you a long time ago, because it's impossible. So it covers 80% of the things. That's really about where the systematization. The next thing that builds on that is staffing power, which is what changed the dynamic for us is we could take young, willing apprentices with no skills, to willing techs with great skills and as many as we wanted. And then so that we could manage our growing company, we learned how to hub and spoke by being able to take senior techs to field supervisors instead of going, hey, you know what? Allan's a great tech. Let's make him a field supervisor. And you have no idea how to do that. So we have a program which is qualify, compete, and train. And that's all tied up in staffing. Then it's sales. At the end of it, sales to me has always been great communication, ethical selling, because I don't believe you ever have the right to sell anything that's not in the customer's best interest.
No.
You're like a great waiter at a great restaurant. Your job is to serve me really well and help me make a great decision. And so that's really the big part of selling power. The next thing is sales coaching, because putting a system out there and not having coaching is like me handing you a gun, but not teaching you how to use it safely, how to use a target and do the rest of it. So sales coaching fits to that. Then the thing is marketing, because you could be great at everything I just rattled off. And if the phone doesn't ring, it doesn't matter. So I like to use the plumbing analogy. It's a bathtub full of the right amount of calls from the right customer at the right time. And anything, you're overflowing that tub. Because if you can, with those three rights of marketing, then you get to decide how much you charge, what customers you work for, and what products you will and won't do. And then the big part of marketing is the drain is wide open if your customer service reps are awful. And I've been to a lot of companies where they really stink. But manuals and training will help. And then the last part is where Ellen always came in is financial power. Now, whatever your accounting team does, it's great because tax accounting helps you minimize taxes, delay taxes, and keep you out of jail, preferably. And then the other part is you have to know Ellen's real world accounting, and those like Megan Likes, who does it these days, which is how do I run my business by what Ellen talks about, looking out the front windshield rather than looking at the rear view mirror, because that's what's in the past. So I need real numbers to run my business. And doing a budget is key for that. So those are the 7 powers.
Wow, just blowing my mind with all that info coming at me, and absolutely every single one of those points is so critical. I'd like to circle back on sales. Well, look, marketing is something that I'm doing a workshop today, which is based on memberships, and I must say that
I love memberships. I'm so glad you brought that up.
I've got to know Billy Stevens, the founder of Sierra Software,
right?
really well. And I'm sort of looking at memberships is something that I've been using probably in my business from 2003, 2004. We had phenomenal results with memberships. But talking about sales, and this was my observation of the industry, Al, is if I had, our company before I exited was about 100 staff. We had 70 trucks on the road. And one thing that I learned is most plumbers, and I'll use plumbers, even though we had electricians, we had air conditioning technicians, don't like to sell. They don't want to sell. I didn't get into this business to sell. We'll wake up, we're all in sales at the end of the day. But getting to know Joe Cunningham and what he's about, the perfect service call, and putting a sales system in place where the technician shouldn't have to sell. They just need to follow a system. They just need, because realistically, Al, everyone loves to buy, but no one likes to be sold, right? Why sell in the first place? Why not have a process where you can give the customer options and solutions to their problem? And that's what I love about the training that we're currently doing at the moment, is teaching contractors how to sell without actually selling. And I'd just like to expand on that, because this is an area, and I'm sure Tommy Mello with his garage door business, which is going friggin' gangbusters.
Crazy.
And I bet you've got a lot to do with that.
Just a couple of years. Yep.
But I think anyone that's really making it realizes that sales is a system, like everything. Marketing is everything's a system. And you're probably the smartest guy in this area when it comes to systems, because you've wrote a book on it. and you are the master. So over to you on that, on the
Yeah,
sale.
so I will tell you, I was great at sales and marketing. And years ago, my team was great at blowing up all my sales and marketing efforts. So that is why I became so good at systems. So I explained to guys about sales is I stopped using the word sales. I always fit ethical sales. I never said sales without saying ethical sales. And what I really, even when I was working my one-to-one consulting, I used to do ethical sales power. And so we would get the guys in the room and I would do some training with them, but I was really there to train management. Those guys coming in, going through the room, I don't know who will and won't get it. And it's like a train, staffing, who's jumping on, who's jumping off, who's staying. So what I taught them was, this is what you're talking about, so well, Al, is I tell them to close their eyes in the seminar. And then I say, listen, I won't take your wallet, even though I am from New York. I say, close your eyes. And I want you to picture salesperson. Now open your eyes. And every one of these, even if they're 20-year-old, all said the same thing. There's a guy in a plaid suit trying to sell me a used car like they don't want it. I go, well, that's not what sales is about. My dad was very quiet, unlike me. He was shorter. I would go on sales calls with him and he would be talking about this loud and people would start to lean in. And he always had a smile on his face because the only reason he saw himself to be there is he was their servant. He was a servant salesperson is the best way I can describe it. He was going to sell them anything and everything, but only if it served the customer first. So a couple of things about why techs don't sell, because you can tell I'm passionate about this.
Yes.
Because I had to train myself first because I didn't want to sell. Then I had to train my techs and my big ticket sales guys how to sell right. What I, again, call the ethical way is when I started to trace callbacks or repeat calls that are killers, right? The number one reason for callbacks is not technical issues. It's not operational issues, track mud, and the rest of it. It's you sold the wrong thing or you sold the right thing, but you left the customer in the dark. So they don't understand what they got. And when we changed the definition of callback for you calling any reason within 30 days after a call, service manager checks into it. Number one, far and away, was the poor communication, which of course is bad sales. And so that is what you need to do. People will understand. One of the other things, Al, because you and I know about flat rate pricing, right? And really it's in the customer's favor, but most guys don't know that. The two reasons that flat rate pricing is in my favor as a customer is it's now I know all I will pay today is this based on what you told me within those parameters. And two is I know it's not because my brother who lives across the street, and by the way, he does, is that he gets a better price because he's a better negotiator. No, what the price is for the same price of the job. The other thing in my text I understood when we first went to flat rate in 1990, 95, I think it was, we were buy a motor for $30, pay you $30. And we thought, wow, there's $40 left over for us because we had never done a budget, right? And so when we did a budget, it came out to $150 selling price per hour. We did our first toilet, it came out to $400. And my brother Richie leans over to me and he goes, do it again. So I do it again, it comes out to $400 and we going home, and ultimately it was a great liberating thing because we understood not everybody's going to be our customer. If you're only interested in price, that's not us.
No.
But so I recognized that my family would call, my friends would call, house of worship would call, right? The three biggest problem areas. So I created a speech and I go, thank you, Al, for calling me because we may be higher than some, but you're entitled to know why. We will be in on time. We are licensed, insured. They're trained in our place, not your house. They will come to the house. They will look at the whole job. They will make recommendations. You get to decide what we do. We will do an expert repair. We'll keep the place clean. We will bring you over and show that. And if there's a problem after that, we're coming back with a smile on our face. If you think that's worth more money, we're your right company. You can imagine we never had a problem closing calls.
Love it. Fantastic. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. And, when it comes to sales, and this is something I learned from tech daddy over the years.
Charlie Greer. Yes,
Charlie,
he's great.
yeah, he's a classic.
Yeah.
He's been down under, I think, 4 or 5 times,
Oh,
and
wow.
we've had a lot of fun. And he's put on some really great training, as has Joe Cunningham, and Kenny Chapman and Mark Madison,
Kenny's great also. Yeah,
and
there's
Matt
a lot.
Mitchell and David Heimer, and like the list goes on.
All these people are going to be going to Google after we get done.
We've had so many great trainers down under. But look, one thing when I started to become I can hold my own with sales only because I believe in the product, and I'm very confident when it comes to selling a drainage system. But the best sales guys that I ever employed, that I trained along with the greats, the trainers that I brought down, the very first plumber that did 300K in a month, one thing I observed, he never said much, like it was just confidence, and he would show the customer, and the customer would nearly always buy. He didn't have to talk his way into the sale. And same with my first electrician, our first 200K a month electrician, same thing. The guy hardly said a word. It was like, really? And that's one thing that I was taught by Charlie Greer is try to make the sale with saying the absolute least amount possible. Let the customer tell you what they want, and sell them a solution that they genuinely need. So look, we could go on and on
we could,
and
because we
on
both love
about
this. We both love this subject
about sales. So look, I wanted to thank you again for coming on. We're probably getting another couple of minutes. We have to round up the podcast.
We got 2 minutes.
One thing I always like to venture into, and I've done this on the last few podcasts, is there any particular book that you're reading at the moment that you could go, wow, anyone that reads this book, it's going to be transformational? And please don't mention the 7 Power Contractor, because that's already Captain Obvious. So is there anything at the moment that's wowing you that you would love to talk about and share with our listeners?
Tommy Mello wrote his second book, Elevate, which is coming out, I think, in the middle of March, and I was lucky enough to read it. And I don't think you can read that book and not come away a smarter contractor. And, yes, Tommy and I, worked together, became good friends, but that's not why I'm recommending it. I'm recommending it to you. So that's one really good one. And he actually gave me a book a couple of years ago I thought was great. Do you know Wickman's Rocket Fuel?
Oh, I love that.
I know.
Can I just, sorry to jump in.
Go ahead. It's your time.
It's yours. The last podcast I did was with Tom Peregrino, the new CEO, general manager or president of Service Nation, Service Roundtable. There's a guy you need to meet. He's an amazing person. He's going to take that business, in my view, to a whole new level. That's exactly the book that he recommended. And it's one of my favorite books. And I tell you, there's a great podcast to listen to on Tommy Mello's podcast. Is this funny talking Australian guy called Allan Ferguson. And I think it's the book that I might have recommended. I don't hold me to it, but Rocket Fuel is about the visionary integrator relationship. Now, until I work that out, because not everyone is a visionary, not everyone is an integrator, and it's a very, very important part of growing a business. And I'm blessed to have one of my closest friends in Australia, Daniel Davies, is he's one of the highest up in the whole EOS org chart. He runs Australia and Asia, and it's the most amazing program, EOS, the operating system. Probably not as good as the 7 Power Contractor system, but it's up there.
I have a lot of guys that are in both, believe it or not.
And
no, I'm serious.
It's an amazing read. So but definitely Tommy's book it's not out yet, but when it is
Elevate, it'll be out March 15th, I believe.
I will be catching up with Tommy at a Service Nation event in Nashville, one of my favorite places.
Nashville is great.
And I get to meet Tommy. We've spoken quite a few times. I've been on his podcasts, and he's a great guy. And just watching him achieve his goal of having a $1 billion business by 2025, and I know he's going to get there. So anyway,
not a question.
I think we've ticked off quite a few boxes today, Al. I want to thank you again for not just being on the podcast, but being a friend. And I can't wait till I catch up with you in person again, my friend.
Sounds good, my friend. Let's make sure we happen.
All right. You have a better than great day. Thanks for everyone who's joining into Pipeline to Profitability, and signing out now with the one and only Al Levy. Take care, my friend.
Bye now.
See you, Al.